Hoi hoi folks, good morning, good afternoon and good evening wherever you are in the world. My name's Sean, aka Uncle Frogface, and welcome to today's video. If you're new here, then welcome. If you're not new, then welcome back. Today we are doing a craft that actually is going to take a few videos, and I'll explain why in just a moment. But if you've been following the channel for a while, you know that basically I'm a massive geek and there's lots of franchises that I am a fan of. One of the biggest is, of course, Star Wars. And in the past, I have made my own Mandalorian helmet. I have also made my own vibroblade as well, using 3D printing and all sorts. Today, we are going to be combining the kind of prop and costume making with a little bit of puppetry. So, I actually put this poll up on my Patreon because there are several Star Wars crafts, several big builds that I've got planned, and I wanted to know which one they wanted first. And they overwhelmingly voted for this one. So we are going to be taking this Mattel Grogu toy and trying to turn it into something a little bit more screen accurate, a little bit more prop-like, a little less toy. So this is going to be multiple parts because this is quite involved. So I want to make sure that we are covering everything, we don't miss anything out, and that if you do want to follow along, you can. So it's also going to be a little bit of a how-to as well. So first thing we should do is turn the camera around and unbox this guy. I've had him for quite a while. He's been sitting in this box waiting to be taken out. So let's release him from his cardboard prison. Yes, here he is. Look how adorable he is. Just so cute. Right, so I have my cup of tea ready. Coaster is still holding up just about. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, go and check out the video where I made this coaster. Candle is also lit, but I'm going to move this out of the way. I have a nice candle lit because it makes the room smell lovely, puts me in a good creative frame of mind. Going to move that out of the way because we are working with plastics and fabrics and things that are flammable. So I don't want to, don't want to cause any hazards with that. So let's open this up and actually have a look inside. So this is the Mattel Grogu, which I actually, on my weekly shop last week, was in Tesco's. Yeah, I shop in Tesco's, and they had the Mattel Grogu, and it's actually changed. So this one has the hard head and the hard hands as well, and the new Mattel Grogu has the same hard head, although I think it might be a little bit smaller, but it now has fabric hands. It doesn't have these hard hands anymore, which is very surprising. The price has also gone up, so I think the new one was like £30 to £40. I got this on Amazon, as I say, about a year ago, and it cost me £16.99, which is an incredibly reasonable price. One of the reasons I wanted to get this so much is my cousin Louis, who I went to my first Comic-Con with last year, does Mando cosplay, and he has his Grogu doll, which he got when he visited the States, and it's one of the more advanced ones. It cost him a lot of money, hundreds of dollars, and when he brought it to me and I had a look, I was like, you know what, I think the Mattel one is pretty similar, and we compared them side by side, and they're almost exactly the same size in terms of the hands and the head. The sculpt quality is a little bit better on the other one, but otherwise they're pretty similar. There is one big standout difference with this one though. Let me pop him out of the case. I think we've got a little wire here. Let me snip. Okay, let's see if that. There we go. That has fully released him. Oh, I have a little hood on the back there. I don't think that's supposed to be a hood. I think it's just supposed to be a collar. Right, I'm going to move the box out of the way just for a second because I do actually need it to demonstrate my point, and that is his colour. So he is very bright green, and if we look at him in the series, actually I'll put a picture just here, you'll see actually he's more of a blue-green. And in fact, if you look at the picture of him on the back of here as well, we have the same blue-green. It's actually a little bit faded on here, but you can still see it's that bluey green colour. So obviously Din Grogu is part of the Yoda species, which I think officially is species unknown. And Yoda is more of a moss green. Yaddle is more of a kind of browny green. And then Grogu is more of a bluey green. So my plan with this whole thing, let's pop into this. He's so cute. Honestly, so squidgy, and I don't want to lose much of that squidginess when I redo this. You'll notice as well he doesn't have any feet. We'll come to that in just a second. Right, plan. So we are going to take Grogu. We're going to take off his clothes. I know, saucy. We're going to take off his robe. We're going to inspect the body, and then I'm going to remove the hands and the head. The reason I'm going to do that is because he needs a complete repaint. So I'm going to paint over him with acrylic paint. So I'm going to try and get in some of the details that are missing, particularly wrinkles around the eyes and the mouth and the top of the head. I want to get as much in as possible. So once he's been repainted, which will be today's video, then we can start thinking about articulation. So I'm going to be basically building a skeleton for him so that the hands and the head and feet can be attached to it. So of course we don't have any feet at the moment, so I'm going to have to construct some feet somehow. I'm undecided yet whether I'm going to 3D print them or whether I'm going to sculpt them or whether I will sculpt and cast them. Yeah, we'll come to that when we come to it, but he is going to have feet as well. So we're going to have the skeleton, we're going to have everything attached, we're going to have a nice soft body, and then of course it's costuming and final parts. So I do want to have a look at this costume, see if it can be improved or whether we just completely remake it. And then it's just things like little tufts of hair and things like that which are missing on this one. But I'm hoping to turn this very cheap toy into something a little bit more screen accurate and a little bit more prop like. Now that I've explained the process, let's have a little bit of a closer look at this toy. So I'm going to have a look at the body. So this is basically just a pillow, and I can feel that it's full of fibre fill, and then at the bottom we've got a bit of a bean bag, which obviously is going to give it a little bit of balance. I'm not going to keep the bean bag on the bottom, but actually I think beans in the belly of toys like this do really well because they give a bit of shape and a little bit of wobble as well. So yeah, this is very thin fabric and it's all very even. It hasn't been hemmed at the bottom, so it is going to start pulling apart at some point. I wonder whether this can be modified. The collar is attached all the way around. Yep. It might be a case of maybe keeping the collar and the cuffs and kind of building from there. I like this. It's like a rug texture, which gives a kind of wool like. I'm not going to be able to get this off over his head, but I am going to be able to pull the arm through, and let's have a look at the construction. So we've got the hand, and I can see just in here there is a cable tie. So I think if I were to go in there and snip the cable tie, cut that away. Let me get my snips, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove the hands from here, and then I'll just double check, but I believe, yeah, the head is exactly the same. Oh, and that's attached there as well. So I'll snip that, and I will snip the cable tie at the back, and I'll separate out all the pieces. I know what you're thinking. This looks like a gruesome sight, but we have the little jacket off, we have our head and our hands, and then we have our body, which, yeah, is a fairly, I'm just checking, yeah, it's a little bag at the bottom that has the beans in, and it's just a very simple, basically a tube that's been brought together at the top with the arm stitched in and a bottom. So in terms of creating the body for a posable doll, I think it's going to be fairly simple. But I'm getting ahead of myself. That's not for today. That is a future bit of this project. And by the way, I had to use the most giant pair of snips that I had, but came off very, very easily. So, because we're going to be painting these, there are a few bits of this that I want to protect. In particular, and I'll just give them a little bit of shine, is the eyeballs. And it's really what attracted me to this toy. The eyes are absolutely gorgeous. They really do reflect the light incredibly well. Just trying to see if I can... Yeah, so they're kind of like standard teddy bear eyes in that they have a peg at the back and then you've got this clear acrylic on the front with an insert inside that gives the iris. But because it's all deep black, it just gives this amazing realistic look, and a quite deep dome. So very, very well done on the eyes on this. Absolutely gorgeous. So I need to protect these as much as possible when we come to doing the painting, and I think I'm going to do that. I should probably test this, but I think I'm going to do this with just some cheap generic brand blue tack that is actually white. So if I get this and knead it a little bit and pop that on, yeah, that's going to stay really nicely. So he's going to look very strange now because I'm going to go through and completely block his eyes out. In fact, where's that little tool that I had? There we are. So I've got this that came with the foam monster kit. I think I could probably smush this around so we're getting as close into the gaps as possible. So give me just a moment. I am going to fill in the eyes and then get my acrylic paints out. We should be ready for the painting section. So I want to spend some time doing this bit so that I get it absolutely correct, and we'll be back in just a moment. Right, so I've taken an old phone stand and I've mounted the head on this because I can turn it around all the way and not have to touch whilst I'm painting. So eyes are completely covered. I've got some acrylic paints over here. So I'm just going to do the head today, but I'm going to keep the paints that I've got over here separate from the rest so that I know what colours I'm using for the hands. It's just going to be exactly the same process, but I want to wait until I've got the feet before I do the hands as well, because they're going to share some detail language. So let's address the colour of this toy. Don't get me wrong, it's not bad, but it's not quite right. So I don't think we need to do a huge amount to this in terms of colour value. I think a couple of washes in potentially... I've got this bright aqua green. I think doing some washes with this is going to cool down the colour and bring it more in line with what Grogu's actual colour is. Once we've done a couple of washes with that, it's time to go in and start detailing. So I have got some reds. I've got a naphtha crimson and a quinacridone magenta over here. This is quite a warm but slightly purple blush. So we've got that here. The blush on the cheeks and the lip, there should be a little bit on the nose as well. It's not quite enough, so I want to bring that out a little bit more. Just reinforce the colour a little bit. Again, changing the hue slightly. Then I've got a hooker's green, and I've got a cerulean blue hue as well as black and white for greys. And then we're going to go in and do the detailing. So that's where we're going to do the wrinkles and things like that. That should be the majority of it. So I've got a great big cactus jar of water. I should grab a couple of paintbrushes. What should we use? Let's get something nice and big. Here we are. And yeah, I think I'm going to start with doing the wash and see how that goes. This is just acrylic on a plastic toy. It should be absolutely fine. But yeah, we'll get started and I'll do this as a little bit of a time lapse. So the reason I'm doing this as a wash is because actually there is some texture on this model. So there are some wrinkles, there is some skin texture, and by using a wash, I'm not going to completely get rid of the colour that's there, but we're going to give a bit of a mottled look and a bit of transparency as well. The downside is that it's going to take a couple of passes. We're not going to get everything covered in one go, nor would we want to. So we're going to go over a couple of times, but you can see it goes on fairly well. Don't make it too thin. This is plastic on plastic and it won't stick if it's too thin. But if you get a good enough consistency, have a bit of a play, you should get a nice finish like this after your first pass. Okay, so I've done 2 light washes going over, and you can see, well actually you can see much clearer if I bring up one of the hands. The tone of the skin is now much nicer. So it's still drying a little bit. There's a few patches where you can see it's still very shiny. That's because it's still wet. Good thing with the acrylic is that it dries matte, which is exactly what we want. So for this, I'm thinking about basically we've got in the scalp some really nice details, but they're not as defined as they could be. For instance, this brow ridge here actually has quite a defined wrinkle that comes all the way down here. There's a couple of wrinkles here, wrinkles around the ears as well, and all across the mouth. So I need to basically paint these in. I'm going to be matte painting them on top, and I'm going to use again the bright aqua green, but for the shadows I'm going to mix in some cerulean blue hue to cool down the shadows, and a little bit of black as well to really darken that up. I'm going to paint in all of the wrinkles first, and then I'm going to come back with just a plain cerulean blue and blend those in. Then we're going to think about highlights. So I'm going to do exactly the same. I'm going to use the bright aqua green, but with a little bit of, this is cadmium yellow, and a bit of white, and think about some of the highlights. And the blushing as well, which we're going to do with the red and purple. Getting ahead of ourselves. Let's start by finding a small paintbrush. Let's see, I think something like that will do. I use this for my miniature master studies. Mix up some paint, and we'll start by painting in some of the wrinkles and just getting a little bit more definition. Ah yes, wrinkles, all of those lovely creases all over his skin. We're gonna hand paint all of them in, and actually this is a fairly simple process. It takes a slightly steady hand, but I mean, I have shakes and I have hand tremors, so I'm not the steadiest with a small paintbrush, but just give it a little bit of time. Breathe whilst you're painting. Very important to breathe. If you the amount of times I've been painting something and realise, you know, I'm starting to get lightheaded because I'm not breathing while I'm doing it. Just make sure you're breathing. But the wrinkles go on surprisingly smoothly. You can see we're really starting to build up, and it's giving much more depth and texture to this. It is also adding to that mottled look of the skin as well. And that's about all of the wrinkles painted in. And what you can do is what I'm doing here is I'm going back with the colour that we did the wash in and going over a few areas. I'm just blending slightly so we haven't got such harsh lines everywhere. And then this is what we are left with, which actually I'm very happy with as the skin texture. We do have the blush on the inside of the ears, the cheeks and the nose. So I've got a couple of colours here, so a mix of the red and the magenta, and then a mix of the red and the yellow as well with a bit of white in, and I'm just dry brushing this in. I'm also going to use exactly the same colours on the cheeks and the lower lip and the nose. The difference there is that I'm going to brush most of it in, and then I'm going to go over it again with the green, because actually the blush on his cheeks is a purple colour, but it's the same colour, just with the green over the top, because it's the blood under the skin. And that's pretty much all of the painting done. Okay, right, everything is now fully drying, so we're painted all the way around. In fact, the colour difference is so drastic. Look at this. Look at those original hands. Look how kind of limey green they are compared to this more mottled bluish green. I'm really liking where this is going, but we do need to unveil these eyes. So let's see if I can pick this off. There we go, that is one eye. Let's do the other. There we go. And that has created a really nice, yeah, that's a really nice finish on the eyes. I'll give them a little bit of a polish, but that is looking very, very nice indeed. Looking much more real than the plain one-tone plastic that was there before. I really love this little bit of blush on the bottom lip as well. Right, we are going to leave it there for today. So, just to recap, we have the head fully painted. We still need to paint the hands, but we're going to wait until we have sculpted feet before we do that. Then we're going to be creating a skeleton, we're going to be padding it out, we're going to be sewing a body, and also looking at the costume and what we're going to be doing with that. But for now, I think we're making really good progress. So, as always, I really hope you've enjoyed today's video, and until next time, goodbye.